Now we look at how housing is related to social welfare. Housing policy is broad, so it has different types of government action included in it. It covers action and legislation and as well as economic policies. So, for example, fiscal policy of increasing taxes can lead to less housing because more taxes means less money available to the people. A change in monetary policy can also affect housing. So increase in interest rates mean that people cannot take mortgage loans and contractors cannot take loans from the banks to increase the number of houses in the community or in the country. Homeless is defined as only the one who lives on streets, but this is not the correct definition. Homeless is the one who doesn't have quality housing and doesn't have autonomy in the housing. So in this way, if you look at how homeless population in Pakistan, it increased many times than what we perceive it to be. Housing was initially not a concern of the government. It only became a concern because it affected other issues. So we have discussed that during World War I, almost 40% of the people were not fit to be recruited. So the British government started a policy which said home fit for heroes, meaning thereby that better homes will be produced for the people who are coming back from the war front. And Housing Act 1919 was also introduced. Another area in which World War I affected the housing was that war effort meant that there should be peace. And peace meant that the labor should work in the factories peacefully. So the government started giving subsidies to the workers so they can live easily and have more money to spare. And they worked regularly in the factories which were producing arms and ammunition for the troops. In communist countries too, housing was part of the industrial policy. So more housing projects were built in areas near the mills or factories or where the Soviet government planned to industrialize, and less housing facilities were provided in areas which were not meant for industrialization. The Soviet government also moved thousands of people or communities from one area to another. So many Central Asian people like Kazakhs or Tajiks were moved from their houses, from their communities to other areas, and government tried to provide housing in those areas. Housing affects, as we have seen, education, health, security, employment, crime, gender, all these different policies. But housing policies can also lead to social division. After the World War II, while the American government tried to increase the housing opportunities by giving loans to the American people, it adopted policies which promoted racial segregation, meaning thereby that loans were provided in such a way that white people lived in certain communities and Black or African American communities lived separately. Markets, of course, also segregate because of income. So low income areas are usually always different from high income areas. And this can lead to racial or ethnic tensions and even riots. So one example of such riots was in Oldham and Burnley towns in the United Kingdom, where riots were large-scale riots happened in 2001. And basically it was that British Pakistanis and British Bengalis fought or rebelled against the British system and against those white who discriminated against them. Similarly, there are Paris. In Paris, there were riots in 2005. Similar case, there were Arabs, French Arabs, which were living in low-income areas with low-level housing, and they rebelled against them, against the French government and against the French communities which discriminated against them. And they said that we live in ghettos with no employment, poverty, crime, and police discrimination. So housing can affect the security in terms of crime, in terms of riots also. Thank you.